welcome back, knife nerds and everyday care people. It's your boy, the Big Canucker, and we have got ourselves a little bit of a knife review today. And I just want to get back on camera here. I've been trying to do the old, not do the talking hands videos all the time, just a little, people got to see, a face, especially a profile like that. They got to see that. I'm just kidding. I'm just having a blast here so far in the first part of 2023. And I want to show you guys new knife I've had since December, and it's been an awesome knife. Before we go to that, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Help me spread my voice, and please, this year we're hitting 5,000 subscribers, come hell or high water. I don't care what I have to do. Sacrifice goats, kiss babies. You never know what's got to be done here to get 5,000. I'm going to do it. All right, here we go. This is what we're going to have a look at this year. We're going to have a look at this ZT 0609 RJ Martin and Matt Martin collaboration with Zero Tolerance Knives. And I got to say that I am really liking this knife. This thing here came to me. I bought it pre-owned, of course, because this is a really expensive bugger here in Canada. I think about $475. It's been discontinued, and yes, I know I've been doing a little bit of that lately, but it's hard to get. I just got to keep this channel going and get knives wherever I can, and I know that you guys want to have a look at it. Even used, you might want to pick one of these up. I know there's some new old stock out there, and I think it's a great buy. It's a whole lot of knife in just a little bit of a package, and I'm going to tell you why. So let's go to the table talk. We'll have a look at the hits, the misses, and everything in between. All right, so ta-da! ZT 0609 titanium handled with an extremely durable, long-lasting CPM 20CV. That's kind of an analog to M390. It is one of the best knife steels that's out there. It's stainless, it's tough, and it holds an edge forever. It is, I think, it used to be the most premium steel out there. Now there's a few other ones out there that are claiming to have a little bit longer edge retention. But hey, you cannot go wrong if you've got CPM 20CV in your knife. Size-wise, it's a little bit on the smaller size, as we can have a look at here. This happens to be the good old Paramilitary 2, and then Paramilitary 3. Now you can see it's a little bit bigger than the PM3, a little bit smaller than the PM2, so it kind of fits right in that middle. Still excellent EDC size. I'm really impressed with what you can do with this knife overall. All right, 7.4 inches long, a blade length of 3.4, just a smidge under that 3.5, but still usable EDC Hall of Fame type size. Now the blade width is 1 inch. It is a drop point, and it's kind of a drop point with this little bit of a kind of high saber ground with this swedge ground into it. Gives it a little bit of a kind of a spear point look to it. The handle length is 4 inches, so it's got some really good handle to blade ratio. I remember when I first saw the PM2, I just thought it looked so goofy because it had such a big handle. This seemed to be more my original thought of what a knife should be. An EDC knife should be kind of 50% handle, 50% blade. I find that in some cases that works fine, and this one it happens to, but I seem to like the bigger handle to blade. So I guess a lot of it depends just on straight ergonomics. Now the handle width itself is 1.125 inches at its widest point. It is 0.46 for a little smaller than half an inch, so just a smidge on the smaller side, but it is it's extremely machined, so it does have a little bit of an arc to the scale. It's not completely flat by any stretch of the imagination. Now the titanium handle material, this one happens to be anodized bronze. It also comes in a blue color, and I'm eventually, once I learn how to anodize titanium, and I do know, I just got to get the power supply and some titanium thread and wire, and then I'm going to be doing some anodizing. I don't happen to like this bronze color for a full scale. I think it looks great on sometimes when you've got some hardware in the bronze color. I just would have preferred the blue, but it is going to end up changing colors for sure eventually. Weight is 3.3 ounces, which just absolutely blows me away because these titanium scales are not skeletonized on the inside, and to have a sub 4-ounce knife in this kind of material with this size and size of blade, I think is absolutely fantastic. Now, the skeletonizing seems to be more on the outside than the inside. The inside is just a complete flat milled surface, but they probably could have shaved more off this if they would have milled the inside a little bit more too. All right, so a pocket clip is tip up, left or right. It is a flipper with a Reeves integral frame lock. It does have a steel insert, so you don't have to worry about any lock stick. It is ZT0609, designer by RJ Martin, and it is made in the US of A. Now, let's have a look at a few other things here. It does have what's called a see-through pivot, and that's a RJ Martin designed pivot. It does look cool, but with that coolness comes a little bit of a sacrifice. And one of the sacrifices is you have to have a special pivot tool in order to open it up and do any sort of maintenance on it. And that just is another added extra cost. And I think this is called the STP tool by, and it's built by Kershaw. So I know there are some other Kershaws that have this see-through pivot too as well. And that's what that STP stands for, see-through pivot. Just in case you weren't exactly clear on that. And that just basically allows you to take it, pop on both sides. You can see it's magnetic. So once you find the hole, a little bit of hair around, there you go. It sticks on. That one obviously doesn't stick on the most fantastic, but it does take a little bit of doing to just kind of stick it on. Get two in your hand, stick it on, give it a little bit of a turn, and it will open up the pivot like Bob's your uncle. If you don't exactly get it on there perfectly, that is a little bit of a knock. Is the fact that there is some, you can't really see them in this video, but when you see this knife in person, like I said, this is pre-owned, and there is some very fine micro scratches on these pivots, and that's obviously from not centering the tool properly. Now, overall, the ergonomics on this knife are actually quite good. There doesn't seem to be any real crazy hot spots. I mean, it is a little bit on the thinner side and a little bit on the smaller side, but I've got double XL hands, and I'm still able to get a full 4-finger grip on this. Sometimes you have to be careful when you're dealing with these type of kind of finger holes because or spots for our fingers, because we're not always built the same, and sometimes somebody with fatter fingers will end up in that middle. It seems to work well for me. My fingers cup in there very, very nicely, and it does have some jimping. Now this jimping here on the heel of the knife, as well as just here on the top of the frame, as well as the just above the ricasso, doesn't seem to be super effective jimping. I mean, it seems to be there more for aesthetics rather than actual functionality. That seems to be kind of the whole part of the knife seems to be built that way. These type of design here on the outside, although it does look good to some eyes, it looks okay to me. It just is not very grippy. I mean, overall, it seems like this knife was ground and then thrown in some medium to kind of take a knock off all the edges. It was probably stone, tossed, and it broke up all the edges, because there's really no super sharp edges on any of this knife other than the cutting surface, which, you definitely want it to be sharp. The clip here is a left or right, but only tip up carry. Now, I wish it would have been a deep carry clip. I mean, although just much sticking out is not the end of the world. It is still fairly deep. I would decide to probably put a deep carry clip on there just to add a little bit, more to this. I think what I'm going to do too is also I'm going to polish these pivots up a little bit more just to make them pop. I'm going to polish up this clip too as well. I really like things to really, really pop. Now the action on it, I mean, is excellent. It does flick out, no problem. I have a little bit of an issue when it's closing though. I wish it would have had one of the things I wish it would have had was a ramp kind of built in the detent ramp. Just when you're doing that little bit of closing, it is totally, it's on KVT ball bearing, so that it's going to be really, really smooth, but it's not, it hits that detent and that's it. It just stays like that. You need to give it a little bit of a press to get over that, and then it'll kind of shake down. Like you've got something like this Chavez here. This one has a pivot ramp built in, and it's just drop dead shutterific. I wish that had that too as well. And I think I will get out my file, and I will file a detent ramp in this knife, and I think it'll make it just that much nicer to use. As far as smoothness and rocketing out, I've got no issues with that whatsoever. And when I do close this knife, I use my index finger here, my pointy finger, just because it's easier to close that way than with my thumb. It just doesn't seem to really, it gets, to a certain bit, and then that pocket pecker hits your thumb, and then you got to deal with that detent and then press it down, and it's just not as satisfying as it is just to close it like that. You just see, once you kind of get to that detent here with the thumb here, that 45 degree, you're running into that detent. It's not very satisfying, but when you're doing it with your pinky finger, you're at 90 degrees, and it's so much easier to close. It's one of those things that's kind of hard to explain. It just, when you actually get one of these in hand, you'll notice that although you can close it with your thumb, you just seems to be better off to close it with your index finger. And that just seems to be the way I like it. The other thing I wish this had is I wish it had a dedicated lanyard hole. I love knives with lanyards in them. And even though that this is my 2022 knife of the year, I am going to get a lanyard in here. I'm going to replace this factory with something that I can put a lanyard on there, because I just think it's so much nicer to draw a knife with a lanyard. And so I just basically went around one of the standoffs with a little bit of leather, and then I glued it together here so it didn't make a big loop and hit the blade when it closed. So it does quiet it a little bit, because it does muffle the sound. When it does hit, it runs into this leather. It quiets it up a little bit, but that's okay. I mean, I'm not flicking this knife out for the sound. I'm flicking it for the feel. And so far, I like it so much better with this leather lanyard on it. And that's just my opinion. Now, would I recommend this knife? Absolutely. If you can get yourself some new old stock, or you can get this pre-owned or on a great sale, I would definitely pull the trigger on that. Premium materials, very, very comfortable. I think it's a great looking knife. Extremely sharp. The one thing though, I think that it's a tiny bit thick behind the edge. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, when I'm cutting through some cardboard, this thing has to be razor sharp to make it all the way through. As it starts to dull just a smidge, it starts to push the cardboard just a little bit, and that's just from where you can feel. It's just one of those things that you can feel that it's just a tad thick behind the edge. I've seen other reviewers out there think that this thing is is a lightsaber through cardboard. I just happen to think that it could use just a little bit of a thinness, or the other thing that I might do with this is just lay that edge back quite a bit, because I've got it sharpened right now at about 21 degrees. I think in order to make this thing really sing, I probably lay that back to about 15 degrees, and that CPM 20CV will take a 15 degree edge, no problem whatsoever. And then I think you're really going to be kind of singing through anything you want to put this knife through. So, yes, so some of the negatives are, it does need this see-through pivot tool. That's just an added expense when you do buy this, unless you never want to take it apart, of course. I wish it had a lanyard hole, a tad thick behind the edge, and I'm not crazy about the color, but overall, really have been enjoying this knife. It's excellent at 3.3 ounces, a small footprint in your pocket, even with a little bit of a pocket pecker. It's still not too bad. Very thin, ergonomic, and I think a winner all the way around. So, I'm going to give this probably and even though it's got some knocks against it, I think that the overall knife is greater than the sum of its parts. I'm going to probably give this a 7.5 out of 10 rather than a 6 or so. It's an excellent knife. It's not a top shelf knife, but it's darn close, and it's something that I think you'll enjoy 100%, especially if you're the type of guy who likes those ones that are built in the US of A. You're a North American knife guy, you don't like the stuff that's built in China. Well then, pick this one up. You definitely won't be dissatisfied with it whatsoever. All right, I sure hoped you enjoyed this, because I enjoyed bringing it to you. I hope you guys are out there. Please stay safe. Please keep your stick on the ice, the shiny side up. This is the Big Canucker. Say adios.